One of these men is a highly respected New York attorney, Lucas A. Ferrara. The other is a self-proclaimed man of the people, known as Mert Roberts. Their aim is to discuss the hottest issues impacting our city, state, and nation. Fasten your seatbelts. Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live, starts now on AM 970. The Answer.
Hear ye, hear ye. It is time to come to order. Welcome to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas live. The show is now in session. Now, before we get to the presidential earthquake, of course, President Biden has announced earlier today that he will not be running for re-election. We're going to get to that. So give us a few minutes. I want to get through some preliminaries and remind you, this is only our second show, and our format will primarily consist of talk and interviews. We'll speak about what's on our minds. Some of it may get controversial. Some of it may get heated, but we certainly welcome you to join the conversation and dial in at 866-970-9622. Now, each week, we'll also offer a few special guests, and today is no different. At the end of our first hour, we're going to be speaking to Sarah Luderit. She's the author of a new book, Worlds Apart. She holds a master's in philosophy in nuclear physics. I have to ask her about that. Master's in philosophy in nuclear physics and a PhD in education. We'll share her inspirational story, beginning with her sheltered post-war childhood, her teaching in Ghana, to her entry into America's rough and tumble business world. I guess because she's got a PhD, that makes her a doctor, Dr. Luderit. So we'll be speaking to her in about 15, 20 minutes. At the end of the second hour, toward the end of the second hour, we'll be speaking to Robert McGinley. He's a writer, director, and actor. He's known for his skate punk cult classic. I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to ask him what the heck that is. Shredder Orpheus, along with his award-winning action crime drama, Jimmy Zip, and the music-driven cyberpunk thriller, Devi Danger. Boy, this sounds really weird, doesn't it? I'm looking forward to this segment. Now, he plans to talk about how the media and technology are being used to manipulate us. And he also sent me a text. He wants to talk about AI. I'm really afraid of AI. So we're going to be having an interesting conversation with Robert toward the end of hour two. Now, in the control room, we've got my new friend who's engineering and producing tonight's program, Alex Garrett. Say hello, Alex.
Good evening, Lucas. I know Mert's with us, too, and I want to get Mert involved. But good evening, Lucas, and what a day, as you've been hearing on AM 970 The Answer. I want your take tonight on Shake It Off. What do you think about all this craziness with Biden dropping out?
We're going to get to it, but first I have to give this gentleman his due. Ladies and gentlemen, my co-host this evening, or every evening as long as he behaves, is the Honorable Mert Roberts. I enjoy, first show was interesting, but we are back to give it a second shot. Hello, Mert. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good, and you don't have to worry. I'm going to be on my best behavior because I want this show to keep going. And last week, a lot of people were nervous because they don't, Mert made people nervous. And this week, I'm going to be on my best behavior because that's not my aim. My aim is to have positive discussions and to force people to think, get people to think, and have interesting conversations. So with you and me together, I know we can do a good job of doing that. And let's get this thing rocking.
I think we can have some fun, and Alex every once in a while is going to chime in just to make it interesting. But before we get to the topic of the night, which is, of course, the Biden withdrawal, I just wanted to say thank you to Dottie Herman, very supportive. She's the star of Ion Real Estate. She's been a good friend to me and Mert. We work on her show, which airs on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Check it out if you want to hear us, and it'll talk about real estate. And then some other people at the station. I just want to go through the names very quickly. Jerry Crowley, thank you. Frank Volpe, thank you. Matthew Sambleton, Kara Facero, Peter Filan. Thank you all for making this show possible. So, of course, Now let's get to the news. The 81-year-old 46th President Joseph R. Biden Jr. circulated a letter just a few hours ago indicating that he was withdrawing and intended not to run for re-election. His letter reads in part, I'm just going to read a couple of sentences. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. That's going to be an interesting speech. Now, we're only 107 days before election. This has created a presidential earthquake, and this will be the first president who has ever done this, who has dropped out this late in the game. The only two other presidents that pulled out were Harry Truman. He pulled out in March of 1952, which at least gave the party some more time, right? And Lyndon Johnson pulled out also in March, interesting enough, in 1968. So Biden is the first to withdraw this late in the game. Guys, what do you think? Is this a win for Trump?
Well, Alex, why don't you take this first, and I'll go after you. I'm interested to hear what Alex would like to say about this.
Oh, boy. We'll see. I think it is a win for Trump, and I also think Kamala Harris will not be the nominee come the convention. And you mentioned the 1968, Humphrey took that over. Anyway, I think this is a big win for Trump. And, of course, he had to go on the attack today. I wish he would have kind of stayed quiet and just, let the process play out. He's got this, guys. He's got this. He just got to stay a little under the radar right now. Wouldn't you agree?
But Trump has never been known to keep quiet, Alex. You should know better than that. And two, the entire Democrat Party is coming out for Kamala. But I'm sorry, Mert, I stepped in. What are your thoughts?
No. That's fine because I was enjoying, you two going back and forth. But I just think this is a good thing because we're seeing the abilities of current day technology be tested. I don't think it's a problem how late he's dropping out because of technology, social media, the internet, the social media age. People make decisions quickly. They don't take as long to disseminate information and ingest information. So I think this is enough time for us to get a new candidate or the Democrat Party to get a new candidate and to thoroughly go through all the candidates and all the people of interest because it takes 2 days at max and then we're on to the next story. So I think we have just enough time to go through each and every one of the candidates that the Democrat Party wants to throw out there. And I think Joe Biden did a good thing because I think he realized once that assassination attempt on Trump happened, the chances of him winning were very low because now Trump has a certain edge now because he survived death. He survived an assassination attempt. So how do you match that type of event? Well, you have to do something drastic yourself. So the Democrat Party.
What shocked me? You know what shocked me, Mert?
Go ahead.
What is the name of that Facebook guy who was interviewed, the founder of Facebook, Alex? What's his name?
Mark Zuckerberg, I believe.
Yeah, Zuckerberg, right. He goes on, he's in an interview. He called Trump badass. Can I say badass on radio?
That is, that's free air right there. That's
okay.
You just did.
Okay, but that I thought that was amazing. I mean,
right.
if Zuckerberg is calling him because they're a toughie, but Joy Reid, I call her Joyless. She's an MSNBC commentator. She thought that whole fist pumping thing was all a setup and all a charade, and we could talk about that another time. But Mert, I think the Democrats have a big challenge ahead of them because I'm not an expert on this stuff, but changing the ballots and getting all this stuff modified may be a problem, particularly if the Republicans are threatening litigation and to really muck up the process. What do you think? They're threatening to do that.
Well, I would say this, and you're the attorney here. So if Joe Biden says, I refuse to run, then there is no other option but to pick a different candidate. So it kind of, if they try to go the litigation route, I think it'll create some problems, because if Joe Biden is taking himself out of the race, then we have no choice but to select a new candidate. So wouldn't you say that that eliminates the risk of that happening, that he's bowing out on his own and he's not putting up a fight?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of problems with a litigation like that. But, my friend, you never know, right? It depends on the judge, how, the throw of the dice, who you get, what the judge finds. Could be unconstitutional or violative of some state law. It's going to be an interesting 107 days, is what I'm trying to tell you. And This chaos, for some reason, always helps Trump. Have you noticed that? That's the pattern.
Yeah, but let me address something you just said, because the 7 or 6 days, I think in this electronic age, we have to test just how capable and smart and how advanced we are, because I think there's people within Washington who's been preparing for this type of scenario. I think people, once they started hearing all of these accounts of Joe Biden having mental issues and health issues, I think people were anticipating something like this might happen. And I think once Trump survived that assassination attempt, I think it became clear, if we're going to try to do something, we need to do it now. We need to try to get the attention off of Trump, because he's got so much free press, and it's really free because he didn't have to pay anything for that. I know people think that he set that up, but I don't think somebody's going to, take a shot to the ear, just to get extra votes. So I think he got free press. He survived it. It's a miracle he survived it. But I think the Democrat Party, they saying, Biden, you don't have a shot. You don't have a shot. It's the hill is too high for you to navigate.
Right, but some of the polls, look, depending on the poll, you're always going to get a different result. But some of the polls were favorable, showing Biden was still doing well. He endorsed Kamala today. Mert, you think Kamala's got a shot? She's done a horrible job as vice president. The border, lousy. I don't think she's got the confidence of the American people to be president of the United States. I mean, do you think she should serve?
The interesting thing about Kamala Harris is she doesn't really have strong black support like Obama did. And this is interesting because she's a black woman, but I noticed a lot of black people go back to her history in California and her treatment of blacks and her putting people in jail because of marijuana and issues like that. So I think that Kamala Harris,
when she was a prosecutor, you mean? Right?
Exactly. So I think Kamala Harris, she's not the safest candidate that people might think, because she should have an advantage being a black woman, but because of her history and because it's been so publicized how her treatment of blacks, and particularly rappers who have come out and spoke about this, who are from California, have spoke about this, I think that she has a chance, but I don't think it's that good of a chance. I don't think she's going to be able to overcome Donald Trump.
You think she's a mistake? Because everybody's talking about it.
I don't think she's a mistake. I don't think you have, unless you could convince Michelle to run. I don't think there's any Democrat that exists today.
Michelle Obama, she would cinch it. She would win it in a heartbeat.
But other than Michelle, and she's indicated that she does not want to run or get into politics, but other than Michelle, I don't think there's any Democrat out there who can defeat Trump. So I think they're putting out somebody who's going to put a great face. It's going to be a historic moment. The first black woman to run for president of the United States is going to be a great story. But I think eventually she will lose because she just doesn't have the goodwill of the people that other candidates in the past have had. She doesn't have the Obama aura. No. Obama had an aura. Black people really liked Obama. Not so much with Kamala.
Everybody liked Obama, not just black people. And I think people of color are really coming to support Trump. It's amazing. If you go on YouTube and watch all these, commentaries, there's amazing black support, African-American support. And by the way, Kamala has $91 million from the Biden war chest that she could inherit if she runs. I know they're floating Hillary. I don't know. I don't think she'd have a shot. But you got Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, whatever you say his name.
And I just heard something very interesting. Joe Manchin is weighing a run, according to sources I'm hearing.
Really?
Watching tonight.
Interesting, because he came out earlier today, or was it yesterday, telling Biden to drop out. Isn't that self-serving? Gary Newsom, who I don't particularly like. I think he's a bad Bill Clinton. He's too slick for me. Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, and J.B. Pritzker, who's a billionaire so he can fund his own campaign. Those are some of the names that are floated today, and there are many more. So, guys, there may be a fight for the slot, is what I'm trying to say. So Kamala may have her hands full in the next couple of weeks. It's going to make for interesting theater, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would think if any of those individuals are smart, the only way I would try to, really take a shot at that seat is if you have something to gain from it. If you're going to drop money into this campaign, you need to know you're probably not going to win. So you need to have a strategic campaign where you go and you say, our goal is not to become the president of the United States. Our goal is to get enough support and drum up enough publicity and attention so that going forward, once Trump is out of the way, because after this 4 years, we don't have to deal with the Trump train no more. MAGA is done after 4 years because that's it for him. After these 4 years, this is what this next person, this next candidate, whoever wants to step into this role and replace Biden, that's what they need to be aiming for. How can I drum up support and look strong for the next 4 years or the next
I totally agree.
Election cycle.
I totally agree. This is just a preview, or as they say, a dress rehearsal. Absolutely right. Now, before we go for a break, we only have a few minutes, guys. Some people are saying that if Biden is not fit to run, then he's not fit to serve as president, and that for the same reasons that he's withdrawing from the race, he should resign as president, which, by the way, would hand the presidency to Kamala on a silver plate, and would work well, I think, as part of an overall strategy. Any thoughts before we go to the break?
Alex, why don't you take this one? Alex, you take this one. I want to hear what you
I've been talking about the 25th Amendment for a while, and if he doesn't resign, I do think the Democrats might pull the 25th Amendment, but like he did
that's
today.
Where, for our listeners, that's where they challenge the competency or the ability of the president to remain in office, and they can vote him out based on, physical, mental, or whatever kind of challenges that impact his ability to serve. Alex, do you really think they're going to vote the 81-year-old, the poor old man, they're going to do that to him? You really think?
I don't know. It would be kind of feckless, I guess you'd say. But maybe they do encourage him to resign. Maybe that's the next step, right?
They probably did a deal. He probably did a deal. Look, if I resign, if I withdraw, let me finish it out. That's what he said in his statement. But I agree with you. I think that, they did this a couple of years back with Trump. They tried to question his competency. These hypocrites, right? And all of a sudden they're silent when it comes to their candidate, who clearly has some issues. Mert, before we go, did you have some thoughts about this? If he's not fit to run, he's not fit to serve.
Well, I don't think there's a chance of that happening because I think he is fit to continue running. I just think he's dropping out because he sees there's no chance to win because of the assassination attempt. I think this is just a ploy to get a lot of attention and a lot of, to try to take the attention away from Trump and his assassination attempt. You have to do something drastic. So I believe him dropping out was a media move to get a lot of attention off of Trump. And that's what the goal of this was.
But you know what the problem is, Mert? The assassination attempt was not expected. We've all been expecting this from Biden. Okay, on that note, it's time for us to take a quick break. And when we return, hopefully Sarah Luderot will be joining us. Dr. Luderot will be joining us to talk about her new book. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Fasten your seatbelts. The ride continues.
Over Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Well, summer is upon us and the weather is beautiful. Everyone has a favorite outdoor activity: golf, bike riding, bird watching, long walks. Ask 100 people and you'll get 100 answers. But if everyday aches and pains are keeping you on the sidelines, I have one answer: Relief Factor. Relief Factor is a 100% drug-free daily supplement that helps your body fight pain naturally. Developed by doctors, Relief Factor uses a unique formula of natural ingredients. It doesn't just mask pain, it helps reduce or even eliminate it. Wherever you're hurting, back, neck, joints or muscles, in 3 weeks or less you'll start to feel the difference all day, every day. So whatever you like to do, swimming, pickleball, hanging out in the garden, Relief Factor can help you feel good again and let you enjoy all your favorite outdoor activities all summer long. ReliefFactor.com, 1-800-4RELIEF, 1-800-473-5433. Fight pain naturally with Relief Factor.
Despite overwhelming support from Republicans and Democrats, time is running out for Congress to pass the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which will keep AM radio in all cars. Text AM to 52886. That's AM to 52886. And ask Congress to bring this bill to a vote right now. AM radio is too important to let this moment pass us by. Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop. This message is furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Hey, it's Joe Piscopo on AM 970, The Answer. We called it. We called it right on the Joe Piscopo Show with Al and Joe and Debbie. Jen Kearns called in and said Joe Biden is out. She precisely predicted that Joe Biden would step away from the presidency. We only give you the best. Thank you, Jen Kearns, and thank you for listening to the Joe Piscopo Show on AM 970, The Answer.
Today, 1 in 5 working-age Americans has a mental health condition.
People in all types of jobs and at all levels.
And the key to helping us succeed is a supportive and inclusive workplace.
All of us have a role to play in making that happen.
So what can I do to help?
As a CEO, I can set the tone for supportive culture.
As a manager, I can offer assistance and accommodations.
As a coworker, I can listen and be a source of support to my colleagues.
As someone with a mental health condition, I can ask for what I need to perform my best.
I can offer all employees the supports they need to deliver on the job. For the team
and for the business.
What can I do?
What can I do?
What can I do?
I can remind others
that we all benefit from workplaces that promote good mental health.
Mental health-friendly workplaces are more important than ever.
And all of us have a role to play in promoting them.
Learn more at whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome back to Shake It Off Live with Mert and Lucas. And we were talking about the Biden withdrawal from the race. We're having some technical difficulties getting our guest on. As soon as we're able to connect with her, we will resume that interview. But Bert, I wanted to ask you something, and I think I mentioned it earlier before the break. Joy Reid, who's an MSNBC host, said that that the whole assassination attempt was nothing more than, this is her words, a photo op, and that Secret Service somehow colluded, that it was a fake assassination. For example, she was saying, why was Trump allowed to stand for 9 seconds while this was an active shooting situation? So she was of the belief that the whole thing was a fake. In fact, she even suggested that he wasn't shot at all, and that may have been glass that was that deflected from the teleprompter. I mean, I really thought that was shameful. I was just wondering what thoughts you had about that reaction.
Well, I'm not surprised, because when you're speaking to your audience and you have a good feel of what your audience is feeling and what's on the top of their head, she's a leader in the Democratic field when it comes to commentary. So she's going to push the envelope. She's going to push the boundaries with her conversation. And a lot of people, that was one of the things that came to mind with them. Both sides does this. Both sides always think there's conspiracy theories, and everybody is so intelligent and so smart that they can plan out all these unique scenarios to, capitalize on the minds of the innocent people who wouldn't be able to catch on of, a conspiracy was taking place right in front of them. So Joy Reid, she's just speaking to her audience. I have no problem with it because I see both sides do it. But I do not think it was. I don't think it was a conspiracy theory or a plot to do a photo op or anything like that. Because if that was the case, it would have been done years ago, decades ago. Somebody would have thought of doing this before. Why now? Why all of a sudden when we already have Biden struggling mentally? You can already use that. Why pull out that trick out of the bag when it's not necessary and you don't need it? There are many who believe Trump was going to take this anyway because of Joe Biden's failing mental state. So I don't think this time you would have needed to do that.
To do what, which is my friend? Would you to make this story up? I'm not.
To make, what I'm saying is I don't think you would have needed to stage an assassination attempt at this point, because he's already got a favorable rating against Joe Biden, because people are looking at Trump as mentally strong.
But looking at. I don't mean to interrupt, okay? But how can you give the allegation or that the Secret Service somehow colluded to create a fake photo op? Really? Do you think that should be given any credence whatsoever? Look, I've been on record last week, Dottie Herman's show, and after our guest, maybe we'll go back into this about the problems with the Secret Service. But do you really think the Secret Service was going to engage in something like this?
No. My point is saying that I don't think that was the case. But if you're talking about should Joy Reid even broach that?
It's
I don't
ridiculous. Think. Let me ask you, don't you think it's a ridiculous proposition?
Well,
I'm asking your opinion.
Yeah. I just said I don't think that this was a plan or a plot. I think this was actually a legitimate attempt on the president's life. But I don't think it's preposterous for her to bring it up on TV because she's speaking to her audience. She's not speaking to you.
But that's not news. That's just that's delusional nonsense. But anyway, I understand that we've connected with Dr. Luderitz. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our first guest of the evening, Dr. Sarah Luderitz, who holds a Master's of Philosophy in Nuclear Physics. Doctor, I want to ask you about that, and a PhD in Education. She's the author of a new book, Worlds Apart, and there she shares her inspirational story, beginning with her sheltered post-war childhood, teaching university in Ghana, to her entry into America's rough and tumble business world. With no further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Luderitz to the program. Hello, Doctor. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You can call me Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. How do you say your last name, by the way?
It's Luterod. It's a long U.
Luterod,
even though you might think it should be a short U. It's a long U, Luterod. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, Doctor. I'm going to call you Doctor, and then I'll call you Sarah, too, because I think you've earned that respect.
That's fine.
Okay? And so I'm going to give it to you. What the heck is a Master of Philosophy in Nuclear Physics? What is that?
Well, it's MPhil is just the name they gave to a degree in London University, which was not just a one-year sort of crash course, but was a 2-year research program, and that was the name they gave across the board. So MPhil was, the philosophy has nothing to do with it. The MPhil was just the title for the degree, and then nuclear physics was what I did, which was low-energy nuclear physics in a little laboratory, tucked away in a corner of London.
Wow. You know, Doc, I read your book, and I loved it, and we'll tell the people how they can get a copy a little bit later. But when I was reading your book, I was touched by your start, where you described yourself living in England, post-war England, as living in a container. A container.
Right.
Why would you use the word container? That made me claustrophobic. It made me sad. I thought of darkness, when you think of a container. Why the word container to describe the beginnings of your life?
I took the word container from the work of a Franciscan friar who has had a great influence on me in later years, Father Richard Rohr, who has started a Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque. And he describes the two halves of life and how we all need to grow up in a container which holds us where we feel safe. And then we need to break out from that and see its limitations. But if we don't have that container, it's not a dark, it's just a place of holding, a place where you're safe. And that was certainly the case of my childhood, which was very limited in many ways in terms of class, in terms of nationality, in terms of religion. We were very, very narrow, but it was a safe place to be. And then, of course, the rest of my life, I sort of tried to figure out how to not escape from that so much as grow, evolve beyond that limited background. But the word container comes from the work of Richard Rohr, who I quote quite often in the book.
Oh, okay, because for me, visually, I thought it was stunning. I mean, it struck me visually. I don't know why. Now, in the book, you talk about what it was like to grow up on a farm. I mean, do you miss those simple days, or are you glad those days are behind you?
Well, it was a different world. I value my childhood experience. In fact, what started me writing the book was just the clarity of my memory of those days and the people, and I wanted to try and capture that in writing. But no, I needed to break out. I needed to do different things, and for a woman to be educated in those days was quite unusual, but my parents gave me that chance, and I was able to take advantage of it and then travel overseas and live in Ghana a long time and marry even a Ghanaian and then come to America. So I still go back there often. My brother still lives in the same house, and it was a wonderful start to my life. But no, I wouldn't have survived in that environment for long, intellectually.
I got
or
you.
Spiritually as well.
But you being a trendsetter, is what your book is really about. You were ahead. You were ahead in a lot of different ways. In that you broke out of the farm. Well, by the way, you mentioned in your book that your question was, are you Christian or you're Protestant? Was there a lot of tension about that in England? Religious tension also.
Oh yes. Catholics were about 10% of the population, and we felt very much like we grew up as a persecuted minority still. There was a long time before Catholics were even allowed. I think it was in maybe the 1920s when Catholics were even allowed to get a higher education. So yes, we grew up with a very defensive mentality, and I mean that's certainly something that Father Richard Rohr helped me. Well, I mean I had abandoned that a long time ago, but he widened my horizons even more. But it was we were very proud to be Catholic, but we were a minority and we were on the defensive.
So you start off being a minority, and so did that give you strength? Well,
there's no doubt that very security of my childhood and the religion and everything was a source of great solidity in my life and self-confidence. And so I know so many people suffer so badly from problems of self-esteem But in that environment, we grew up really knowing who we were or who we were supposed to be. And then, of course, I broke free from it. But it remained with me, and those attitudes, even unquestioned, continued too far into my life. So part of the book is trying to unravel those questions of why that childhood carried with me so long in terms of presumption of superiority, the entitlement
Sarah,
of
Doctor, we have to take a quick break, but please hold on. We'll be back after this break, and we'll continue our discussion. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate. I get to speak with so many people thanks to this radio show, and I got to tell you, people are getting really frustrated with car dealers in the process of buying a car. And I get it, as it can be brutal with all the games, the back and forth, the haggling. Well, if you're tired of all of that, and if you're tired of dealing with dummies every time you're in the market for a vehicle, do I have a solution for you? The guys over at Route 22 Toyota in Hillside, New Jersey have it all figured out. Alex Cancella and his team are real people. They don't waste your time. They have the entire process streamlined, and it really is the smart way to buy. Alex has all sorts of deals going on this month, but it's simple. If you're in the market for a new or used Toyota, call 973-705-8905. You tell them Piscopo sent you. Again, 973-705-8905. Tell them I sent you, and then proceed to kick yourself for not knowing about Route 22 Toyota the last 3 times you needed a car. Am I right? Get over to Route 22 Toyota, right on Route 22 West in Hillside, New Jersey, or online at route22toyota.com.
Join me, Dennis Prager, on an unforgettable Bible cruise to the Caribbean, November 29th to December 8th, 2024. Imagine 9 days of basking in the sun, surrounded by the stunning beauty of a tropical paradise. Amid profound conversations, I'll share about the Bible and my insights into current events in a way that I believe you will really enjoy. Secure your spot on this once-in-a-lifetime adventure by calling 855-565-5519 or booking online at PragerBibleCruise.com.
They're Trump's most diehard fans in the front row at every Trump rally.
You had to love the United States of America. You had to support Mr. Donald Trump's re-election.
Trump's Front Row Joes is the new 2-part documentary offering the first inside look at the men and women standing shoulder to shoulder with Trump in the greatest political movement in American history.
The kind of basis for all the rallies, there's like dead fans.
Like-minded people following their hero all around the country, exhausting their bank accounts, camping out for days in the freezing cold and scorching heat to support Trump's re-election and make America great again.
The Front Row Joes are very successful, incredible people.
Trump's Front Row Joes, from executive producer Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary and communications director for President Donald J. Trump.
Friendships I've made over the years as a Front Row Joe, it's probably the best part of it.
Don't miss Trump's Front Row Joes. Watch it now. Go to salemnow.com. salemnow.com.
Craving that signature Sunday sauce? Michael's of Brooklyn will make your place a must. Join Michael's of Brooklyn Sauce of the Month Club. Receive a different jar of Michael's of Brooklyn pasta sauce, homemade pasta and biscotti each month for 6 months. Make your home the place to be with Michael's of Brooklyn's signature fresh marinara right in your home. Visit michaelsofbrooklyn.com and order online. That's michaelsofbrooklyn.com. Michael's of Brooklyn, serving the community since 1964.
Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Lucas Ferrara speaking, and we're talking to Dr. Sarah Luderat about her new book, Worlds Apart, a memoir of uncertain belonging. Doctor, where can we get this book before we continue our conversation? Is it on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon in both Kindle version and paperback version, or you can get it directly from me if you want to share my email address. But the easiest would be to just get it from Amazon.
Okay, good. If you want to share your email address, we'll do that before we sign off. How about that?
Okay.
Doctor, what I wanted to ask you about, and please don't take this the wrong way, but this is for our listeners to understand the historical context. A young lady interested in nuclear physics, that was unheard of, at the time?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Wasn't it unheard of for a young woman to be interested in nuclear physics?
Not entirely. When I studied physics in Oxford, I was one of 13 women in a class of about 200-something men. So there were some women there.
But that's still a very low number.
When I came to the States and I started working for the nuclear power industry in training, then I was a very, very sole woman there in a very male environment.
Well, we'll be talking about that in a few minutes, but before we get there, so as your life progressed, you ended up in the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Right. Well, it was the early post-colonial days, and we were idealistic, and we wanted to save the world. And so, friends were gathered in actually a movement that was of French origin, where people were sort of really wanting to go and serve in the former colonies. And so I went with a group of people there to work at the University of Louvain in the Congo. So it was, and I taught in the physics department. So that was an outgrowth of my early idealism.
And it was a challenging time to live in the Congo, wasn't it? I mean, you talk about that in the book.
Well, it was, but we were very protected at the university. It was very much a Belgian enclave, and it was very well protected, so I never felt in personal danger. But yes, it was the country was very troubled, very troubled.
And was there a lot of poverty?
Oh, yes. You don't have to look far in Africa to find poverty, but you also find something very different as well. So when I went to Ghana, it was a big change in terms of the openness of the society and the welcome of the people. It was a society that was not afraid. It was also going through a lot of political transitions, but it was a society where there was a lot more self-confidence. People were not so afraid. You didn't have soldiers at the ready all the time.
Now, why Ghana? How did you end up in Ghana, which is another interesting choice?
Well, when I decided to leave the group I was with and go out on my own, then I just looked for opportunities, and I ended up finding a job in Ghana, which was wonderful. I just loved Ghana.
Is that where you met
Clement? And still do, because I go there often.
Is that where you met your husband, or Clement?
That's where I met my husband, yes.
Who also a teacher as well. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how you met, if you don't mind? Because you talk about that.
He was a professor at the university as well, as a lecturer. In those days, we called ourselves lecturers. And, we just hit it off. He was interested in some of the things I was interested in, and we were both very committed to the betterment of education in Ghana. And so that's what we did. We got married like young people do. And then we went to graduate school in England and went back to work in the university until the economy got very, very difficult. And we had 3 children to educate, and he got an opportunity to work at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and that's where we went, and that's where we stayed for many years. That's where we are right now, basically.
But didn't you find it difficult to be part of a mixed-race marriage? My recollection is it was somewhat taboo, no? At the time.
Yeah, well, there are many more mixed marriages now than there were then.
Oh, yes. Today it's accepted. It's not. Yes.
Yeah, I think our children maybe experienced the rough edge of it more than I did, because I just assumed, my children are brilliant. Why would anybody else think any different? And I think I didn't realize the extent and the depth the racial animosity that existed. But
yes,
I had my share of run-ins with the school.
Yeah, you talk about that in the book. Share that, because you said that other mothers were not friendly, not approachable. You even talked about the church being very disappointing. Can you share some insights about that?
Well, I think it was partly, my own English upbringing. I was a little standoffish, maybe, and they had their own talk and their own backgrounds, and I just didn't fit in. And that's why I say uncertain belonging, because although I came to the States and I've lived here a long time, because of our mixed-race situation, we don't really belong, and we don't really belong in Ghana because I'm very often the only white person in a sea of Africans, and we don't really belong in England because he's often with my family and it's all white and just him. So but that's made life very interesting, and navigating those boundaries and questioning the assumptions that caused the barriers was really the task of writing the book. And and it's been a very valuable life, a very rich life, just because of those experiences.
Was your family resistant to a mixed race marriage?
Well, they weren't exactly excited about it. Yeah, there were hidden, there was no very vocal, overt opposition, but there was obviously there were hidden tensions. Yes.
So you're a rebellious one, aren't you, Doctor?
I was a what?
A rebellious one. You're rebellious.
Well, in a way, I just did what I needed to do. I didn't feel I was being rebellious at the time so much. Yes, I was rebellious in a way.
There you
was
go.
Kicking
I got you to admit it.
Yeah, yes, you did. You did. I was kicking against some of the rigidity of the outlook of my family, of my upbringing.
Yeah, we all fight that, but you challenge the societal norms. Because you broke it. You broke it by marrying a man of color, going to Africa. You almost that rebelliousness, I think, is what has got you motivated. What's brought you the success that you've had, don't you think?
Right. Well, when I went there in that post-colonial era, there was still a lot of expatriates working at the university, and there were a lot of mixed-race couples. So it was a very congenial environment. Those years I spent at Cape Coast University.
Now, this struck me when I was reading your book. You told me that the church wasn't as supportive as you had hoped. What was up with that? This is when you came to America, I believe. When was that? In the 80s? When you came to America?
Well,
and
the church, I don't think it was racially motivated. They were just stuck in their administrative ruts, and they didn't know how to welcome or how to recognize a family that had such different background. I often thought when I came to America, if we're coming from Africa, if we'd been poor and needy, which we weren't wealthy by any means, but we weren't that needy, and we were obviously both very well educated, but we didn't fit the type. We weren't poor and pathetic Africans, and so I often thought that if we had been, then maybe we would have found our place would have been recognized better. But
so you don't
think it was unwelcoming. They just didn't welcome us. They just did nothing to welcome us, and that was very hurtful to me because I really would have valued if they had extended a hand of friendship or welcome, but they didn't do it.
Yeah, that's in your book. You being very diplomatic, Doc, but you don't think it was racism? You don't think it was racism?
Well, I think it was hidden. It was hidden there. But,
there you go.
It's a very mixed community where I go to church, and it's still a very mixed community. But, the whole movement following George Floyd's death of white entitlement has caused people to wake up to what was buried in their subconscious, and they didn't realize it. And I think we encountered a lot of that.
Yeah, but you were way ahead of your time, Doc. Mert, what do you think? I mean, this young lady challenged hatred.
Well, I'm sitting here listening. I'm just thinking, back then you had to have some sort of, a lot of bravery to do what she did. Even though she said where she went, it was, commonplace. But, still to go back home and, everybody around you is conformed to one thing, and then you come and you do a different thing and you blaze your own trail, your own path. It takes a lot of guts to do that.
I agree, Doc. A lot of strength. Now, you have
thank
3
you for
kids.
saying that.
You have 3 kids. What do they think about your book? Are they okay with this?
Oh, yeah, they're very excited about it. Very excited about it. They told their friends, and because all of them operate at some extent at the margin with different cultures, and they've had their own experiences, and so they're very excited that I've written the book, and they've been willing to share it and glad to share it. Mm-hmm.
Now, let me tell the listeners that you've been married for about 52 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yes, coming to 53 now. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations!
It's a long time, and you know that was one of the very offensive things when people would say, well, first of all, when I was, for example, sitting by my husband's bed in hospital, he was hospitalized for quite a long time at one moment, they would say, "Who are you?" Well, who do you think? I'm the wife. But there was an immediate assumption that I was somebody from outside, and then when they knew we were married, it was like, well, how long have you been married? Like, this is not the usual thing. So I was happy to knock them on the head, with sort of unexpected situations. That was what living at the margin was, living at the margin, living at frontier, and then trying to understand where they're coming from. So there was this one incident which I relate, where there was a visitor from Ghana had come to our church, and one of our deacons had visited him in his through the Catholic Police Services in Ghana, and so he was there with his wife. And when I came in with my husband, who doesn't normally come to church, his wife said to me, "But I see you in church all the time." Like I had no right to come in with an African husband because I was supposed to be one of them. It was just funny. I still laughed about that. I wrote that in the book too.
Now, in your book, Doc, you mentioned how Clement wanted a traditional marriage and that he wanted you to be home with the kids. Did I read that correctly? So he gave you a bit.
Yes. I mean, he was, for that time, he was pretty open-minded and pretty helpful. But in those days, men didn't do a lot around the house. And
the women stayed home. The women stayed home and they cooked and had babies. So Clement wanted you to stay.
His mother didn't stay home, but she certainly did all the cooking and the sewing. She worked as a teacher and she did everything else besides. So my mother never worked, but his mother did, and she was an amazing woman. So yes, we were on the frontier, between women's lib and women going to work and women being stay at home. And certainly in my family, I was an outlier in terms of having an education and working. Yes.
So how did you find the balance, Doc? Having 3 kids, a marriage, and then working in America as a consultant for the General Physics Corporation, and starting your own company in 1997. How were you able to balance all that stuff?
Well, I think I say in the book there was never a right answer. Should you leave work early to go and pick the kids from their event, or should you say don't go to the event because I can't pick you? Should you travel and not be there when something was happening at home because the work required you to travel, and you knew that if you gave the excuse of family, then that would brand you and you would never be able to succeed at work? So it was always a balancing act. There was no right answer. There is no right answer, I don't think. Because even nowadays, if people think that you can just be a working woman and the kids will get on with it, they need your attention. So the one boundary I really drew was I was never going to be away over a weekend, and I never was.
Doc, we have to take a break. Can you stay on for a few more minutes, or do you have to run?
Of course.
We would love to have you for a few more minutes after the commercial break. So stay tuned. Dr. Luderat would be back after this break, and we'll have a little more discussion about her book, Worlds Apart.
The preceding hour of programming sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC. This is WNYM, Hackensack, New Jersey, New York City.